right, everybody. My name is Alex and I work on the support team here at Tripleseat, and welcome to the new user training. We're so excited to have you. Before we get started, I do want to point out that for this webinar, mics will be muted, but I'd love to hear your questions as you have them. On your end, you should see a questions box, and if something's on your mind as we go along, feel free to let me know and I can read it aloud and give an answer. Cool. So in today's webinar, I'm going to walk through the core functionality of Tripleseat in the hopes of achieving the following two objectives. So first, in this webinar, we're going to familiarize ourselves with the major landmarks in the software. And the second portion of the webinar will be walking through the event lifecycle from start to finish. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. The first landmarks I'm going to point out to you today are the ones that you'll find at the top of your screen, and they'll follow you across all pages in Tripleseat. So my name is Alex, but for the webinar, I am Joey Trainer. If I were to click here, it would bring me to my profile section in Tripleseat. You'll notice you can also get there by clicking my profile in your lower left sidebar. But this button up here is just a helpful shortcut. That would be the best place to go to manage your password, your notification preferences, your email signature, things along those lines. Next, you'll notice there is a search bar whose function is probably pretty intuitive. What is nice about this search bar is you'll notice there are these two checkboxes. So you can include lost business, or maybe you even deleted an event record and you want to check it out. You can use the show deleted checkbox to include those deleted events in your results. To the right of your search bar, you'll see a globe icon. If you click here, it will show you recent notifications for events and leads that you're managing through Tripleseat. You'll notice here it says view all. So if you'd prefer to view all notifications and not just those most recent ones, this would be the button to click to arrive at a page with more information about that. To the right of our notifications is a quote icon, and these are your emails. So these are your discussion messages that you have with your guests for leads and events. Similarly, you'll notice there is a view all button that would route you to your discussion center, which is akin to like an inbox in your mail client. Finally, you'll notice three buttons in the upper right corner, and we refer to these as hot buttons. I'll circle back to help in question at the end of the webinar, but to the right of that, you'll see a button for new lead. So if someone were to walk in or call in on the phone because they're interested in hosting an event with you, you could use that button to jot down their information, to create a record of them in Tripleseat, to follow up with, and for your reporting. Then to the right of your new lead button is a button for new event. This will bring you to a page that asks for a little more information about the prospective event, and it will create a record on your calendar as well for the date and time in question. All right, so in addition to these buttons at the top of your screen that will follow you throughout Tripleseat, so too will your left sidebar here. You'll notice there's this three-line button you can use to toggle the appearance. Maybe you want more space in the middle of your page. I like to keep it open. So in your sidebar, this is going to be divided into three sections. The top third of your sidebar consists of functional spaces in Tripleseat where you can go to perform work. So you'll notice this is where you can go to check out your calendar. There is a dashboard exclusively for leads, events, tasks, etc. So this is more functional spaces in Tripleseat where you can check out. The middle third is what I really like. This is dedicated to recently viewed pages. So if you're working on a handful of events, this is excellent because if you just hover your mouse, it'll show you some need-to-know information at a glance about that event. And if you were to click Andrew's surprise birthday, it would bring you to a page with all the information about that event in Tripleseat. The bottom third of your sidebar just has more information. So partnerships, if you'd like to see what other softwares integrate with Tripleseat, that's a great place to check that out. Marketplace has information about add-ons. And then settings, settings would be the place to go to manage the tools for your team and further customize Tripleseat for your business. You may not have access to settings depending on your user role, but someone on your team definitely does. And lastly, we have that My Profile button that I mentioned earlier. Cool. So now that we've reviewed the sidebar and the buttons at the top of our page, let's talk a little about our dashboard. So that's the page we're currently looking at. The dashboard is the first page you'll see after you log into Tripleseat, and it condenses all of the core aspects of your site into an easy-to-view format. Starting at the top of your dashboard, you'll notice there are two graphs. So this one on the left has to do with leads or people who submitted their information about potentially hosting an event. You can toggle this graph using these preset intervals of time. And you'll notice that the data associated changes when you change the time frame. Also, you'll find that there are these dots along the graph. And if you were to click on any dot, it would bring you to a report with more information about the 17 leads who submitted in March, for instance. Your graph for events operates along similar lines. So you can toggle the interval of time here, which changes the data. And you'll also be able to click on the dots along the line to generate a report. Below that, you'll find a section for your dashboard having to do with new leads. The people shown here have submitted their information online, but they've yet to be viewed by anyone at your venue, so they require follow-up. Each lead is represented as a row with their name, contact info, requested event date, just need to know information such as guest count if they provided it. And you could either click onto their name to go to a page, the lead details page for Leslie Nope, or perhaps you want to jump straight into a conversation with her. You could use this action dropdown, and you'll notice there's a comment. This would be where you can go to start a discussion with Leslie. To the right of your new lead section is a section for your sales goals. So if you have access to settings, or if someone else on your team has access, you can go to settings and configure sales goals by individual and by the collective company goal, which is just another way to track how people are doing towards your business's objectives. Underneath those goals is a stripped down version of your calendar. So unlike the version of the calendar we're going to check out in a minute, this one on your dashboard just aims to suggest your upcoming schedule at a glance without bogging you down in the minutia of all the data for each event. So you'll notice on this calendar, each event is represented by a color-coded rectangle, and the colors revert to the status of the event in question. And so you can go back and forward just to get a sense of what's in the pipeline. Next on our dashboard is an area for direct book events. Direct book is a feature that, beyond a regular lead form, which allows folks to submit their information to you, direct book allows guests to also select what items or food items they're going to purchase. It invites them to authorize a credit card, so all you have to do is either accept or reject that business. Direct book is an advanced feature, so I'm not going to talk about it too much today, but we do have webinars dedicated exclusively to direct book in case you're interested. And below that, you'll see a section for events within the next 7 days. As with our leads, each event is represented by a row where you'll see the event name, the guest, maybe they are a corporate customer, so you'll see there where they work, the time, the date, etc., along with the status. If you have a lot of events in the next 7 days, you can use this owner manager dropdown to winnow out the results for just a particular event owner. So maybe you only want to see events that you're hosting. You could use this dropdown to do so, and you could change the order of appearance if you so desired. Cool. The last section that I want to point out on this main dashboard has to do with tasks. In Tripleseat, tasks can be created for leads and events, and you can either create those manually, or else you can set up automatic tasks to generate using an if-then logic. These can be really helpful in making sure you're hitting major milestones in the event planning process, and probably intuitively, they're most helpful if folks are checking them off as they go, just to make sure as soon as they follow up with the new lead, they mark it as complete, and then it will disappear from this page the next time they visit. All right, and that concludes everything on our main dashboard. All right, so the next page that we're going to check out together is our calendar. We're going to get there by going to our left sidebar and clicking calendar, sort of towards the top here. More so than anything else in Tripleseat, this calendar will serve as the most powerful visual tool available to you. And you'll have the option to configure the information on this page a few different ways. So you'll notice this is a month view of your July events, but if you'd like, you can use this drop down to configure the information just for a particular week, for a particular day. And we even have this timeline view. This is really helpful if you have an extremely busy day. I'll just show you. It'll show all of your rooms here on the left, and time will move from left to right, so you can see both the time and the space in your venue that the events are going to take place. I'm going to bring us back to the month view. Then you'll notice there is a drop down for event styles. So event styles allow you to manage the event planning workflow based on whether your guest is going to have the event at your venue, so an on-premise event, or maybe it's a catering or delivery order. So if, for instance, you only wanted to see catering events, you could select, or you could select on-premise. Next to the right, you'll notice there's another search bar you can use to search through your calendar. And the most helpful tool on this page that I recommend to folks is this filters button in the upper right. I like this filters option just because if you have a lot of information, it can really help you sort through that in an effective manner. So perhaps you only want to check out events with a status of prospect because you want to make sure that they get followed up with and that you convince them to host with you. You can filter by status. Maybe you work at multiple locations that have Tripleseat. You can filter by location or even by room within that location. You can filter by owners, and again, you can filter by event styles down here. So that's just a helpful thing to point out. You'll notice that for every day on your calendar, there is this quote icon here, and this allows you to add a note. Beyond just giving you the power to communicate something with the rest of your team, I like it because you can block off space in your venue through this note feature. So perhaps someone is coming in to repaint the walls in the lounge tomorrow. If you select prevent bookings for the duration of this note and you add it to your calendar, should any of your teammates try to book an event in the lounge, they will get an error message with this note so they know that they cannot proceed with planning that event because something is already holding the space. So I just love that feature. And if you click on any day in the future, you'll see a create event button that will route you to the same page as if you were to hit new event in the upper right. And the last thing, you'll notice that below our calendar in the right is a button that says export. So in Tripleseat, you'll have the option to export the information from your calendar to Outlook, Google Calendar, or iCalendar. And this button will bring you to the page with the information you need to do that. That will be a one-way push of information. So although this dinner or birthday party will appear in Google, your dentist appointment, or date will not flow back into Tripleseat. So it's a one-way flow of information. All right, I'm still not seeing any questions, but if you have them, feel free to let me know. But that concludes the first half of the webinar, which was just our major landmarks. So now we're going to pivot to the second half, which is managing an event from start to finish. So let's pretend that someone has just called in because they're interested in hosting with us. I'm going to use this new lead button in the upper right to create a lead. So we are just going to write down the name of the caller, and perhaps that's Ashley Daniels. If she's booked with you in the past, she may already be a contact and you can select. Otherwise, you just want to fill in her email and phone. She's interested in hosting at Millie's restaurant. And here you'll see that event style drop down. So if she wanted to do a catering event, you could select full service catering. And you'll notice when we choose that, these fields appear on the right that allow us to input the address, the city, these important fields that might be relevant for catering. The same for drop-off catering. Pickup, you'll notice, doesn't have as many fields because the guest is coming to you. But perhaps Ashley really wants to have an on-premise event with her family. Maybe it's their 10th anniversary party for 50 people. She'd like to have the event maybe on August 28th, which is a Saturday. And we can use that date field to find the date in question. You'll notice in the right here, it says events for August 28th. If there were other events at Millie's, those would show here with a preview of the time and room of those other events, just so we have an idea, but it seems pretty open. And maybe this dinner is going to be 6 to 8:30. You can use this market segment dropdown to fill out just a little more information. So this is a social event, and your lead source refers to how you and your lead got in touch with each other. So this was a phone inquiry. And maybe there's no referral, perhaps she just has booked with you in the past. Now, if she mentioned anything in particular, perhaps she wants a disco theme or an Elvis impersonator, anything that's out of the ordinary or ordinary, you can jot down that information in this additional info field. But then you can click create. When we hit create, that's going to bring us to our leads page. So we could also get here by clicking leads in the left sidebar. And you'll notice Ashley is the first person on this page. I'm going to click on her name to bring us to the lead details page with more information. So here we see that information we've just jotted down. Again, there is, and on the upper right, it'll display if there were any conflicting events for that date. And then there are these functional tabs on the lower portion of the page. Like I mentioned, you can create tasks that create automatically. So for this new lead, we have 2 reminders to follow up with her. All right, so to email Ashley, we'll want to go to our discussions tab and click general discussion here to jot down our message. So we have 2 different methods of creating an email for her. We could either use this general comment box to create a quick message, or what I recommend is using this button that says use email editor. When we click that, it'll open a window where we can further customize our outreach. So first, it's just going to ask who should get our message, Ashley. Now, if you wanted to create something from scratch, you could use a blank template. Or what I recommend is using email templates available to your whole team from this dropdown. Maybe there are two options: lead response, date available. This will fill in some general language that has been set up in settings. And if we wanted, we could add files from our library, or we could just leave it as it is and hit send. When we hit send, that will deliver the message to Ashley, and it'll copy that in the discussion tab so we have it for reference going forward. Beyond the text we've included and beyond our email signature, when Ashley opens this email, she'll see below, right below the email signature, a button that says click here to view your guest portal with a link. At this point in time, the portal will just have the basic information about the prospective event, so the date and time. But as you move forward with the planning process, it's just a great way for guests to be able to jump into the portal and see what's going on. Cool. Now that we've reached out to her, I always recommend staying on top of your tasks. So I'm going to go back to tasks, and I'm going to mark this one as complete. And let's pretend we've gone back and forth a lot, and Ashley is certain she wants to host this party with us. So I'm going to mark the other one as complete as well. At this point in time, rather than creating a new event, we want to convert the lead that already exists into an event. This is important because any communication we've had with Ashley when she was a lead will stay on the event if we convert her. So let's use this button, convert to event, at the top here. This is bringing us to a page asking for a little more information. So the event name is the same. The date still is going to be the 28th. The time is 6 to 8:30. But perhaps your team needs to get in 30 minutes early to set up. You'll notice this add setup and tear down time button. And you can use this to create a little cushion. So maybe this is 5:30 p.m. This will make sure that your other teammates don't overbook this space 30 minutes prior to and 30 minutes following this party. Then you'll notice there is a place for status. Statuses are a great way of communicating across your team where an event is in the planning process. You and your team can decide to define these statuses however you'd like, but here's what we recommend. So a prospect event is in the earliest stages of planning, and it can overlap with other prospect events on your calendar. This is the earliest stage in planning. You haven't created documents for your guest yet, and nothing has been signed. After you have created a set of documents and sent those to your guest to approve, and maybe you also required a deposit, once you send those out, at that point, we recommend changing the status to tentative. This will mean it will hold the room on your calendar and will not allow you to put overlapping events of other statuses. After your guest signs off on the contract and submits a deposit, then we recommend changing the status to definite, because at that point it has a high probability of taking place. You'll want to update the status to closed after the event has happened. Once the event has taken place and there is no follow-up action required, at that point you can change it to closed so you and your team know, right, that there's no additional tasks for the event in question. Then you'll notice there's a status for lost. So if for some reason this party fell through, you could move the status to lost and it would free up your calendar, but it would keep all documents and correspondence on record, And it generates this field, lost reason explanation, where you could jot down maybe why this party fell through, and you could report on that field down the road. Finally, we have a status called Waitlist. So someone on your team with access to settings would need to enable this status, but it's a great option if maybe there's a room at your venue, which a lot of people write in requesting to host in. This will allow you to create a waitlisted event, even if this special space is already booked. If the first event on the calendar falls through, the waitlisted event will move from waitlist to prospect, so you can follow up with them. Cool. So I'm going to leave this as prospect because we're still pretty early on. All right, with a potential expected guest count of 50 people, I'm going to put this in our main dining room because it has a capacity of 60. Again, you'll notice this event style. So if you wanted this to be catering, you could select from these 3 options, which would generate those other address fields like I mentioned. It's going to be in the main dining room though. Next, maybe you want to detail out the type of event. So this would be a dinner party, and setup type, this would be a community table. And you can customize type of event and setup type drop-down options in settings. Next, you'll notice that there are some financial fields that you can fill out. At this point in time, I only recommend putting in a food and beverage minimum or a rental fee, because these other fields will generate based on the documents that we create. So, but maybe there is a $2,000 minimum. Cool. And I'm going to hit create at the bottom here. When we hit create, it will bring us to the event details page. So as with our lead, we see that data we've just input into the system, and we have functional tabs at the bottom here. You'll notice on the right side, there's an area for attached files. So if there's something that you and your team need to view but shouldn't be visible to your guest, maybe a POS receipt or a floor plan diagram, this would be a great place to upload it. Your venue can also integrate with All Seated. So if you really want to make floor plans on an event by event basis, you can use this integration to jump straight into that other software to do so. The majority of your time planning an event, though, will have to do with building docs. So let's go to our docs tab here. Cool. So we're going to use this button that says add a document to this event. You'll notice there are 2 options. Maybe there's one document set for catering and one for just regular on-premise events. I'm going to hit contract and event order. This is our document template, or the form where you and your team will detail out any information that needs to be communicated through the docs, or else maybe charges that will add cost. So you'll notice that some text boxes will pull information by default. So wherever you see a perforated line, that's a merge field, and it's going to pull like the contact name or their email from elsewhere in Tripleseat. Some sections, though, you'll need to fill out by hand. So special instructions, maybe this is a very whimsical 10th anniversary. Elvis impersonator to arrive early, special disco ball on order. And you'll notice there are these styling tools that you can use to zhuzh up your text if you want, or you could keep it pretty plain Jane, whatever works best for you. Next, where it says food, this represents a pick list section. So pick lists are important because they represent preloaded selectable items. And when you add them to your documents, they add cost to your event. So let's check it out. We're going to click Add from Pick List right here underneath Food. In the pop-up window, we see all of our menus available to us. So maybe we want to do this a la carte dinner menu. We could either go through and click line by line, or we could use this check all button to select all items on the menu. And then we can click add selected items. When we do that, it pushes each pick list item into our documents for us to check out. So you'll notice to the right of each pick list item, there is a field for quantity. So when we define, put a number in here, that will multiply by the item price to generate a total. Then to the right, you'll notice there's this button with 3 dots. If we click there, it expands the field to show just a little more information. So here's where we see that this item has a category of food. That makes sense. I mean, shrimp, it's probably intuitively food, but this matters because all of your food items will total up and display to your guest in the billing section. So it'll say food, the total cost of all your food before taxes and fees. Your category also matters because all items of a category will get the same taxes and fees. So if we change this to beverage, it has the same selections. Maybe AV, it doesn't get gratuity, but we'll leave it as food. That's just a great place to see what's getting counted up for each item. Lastly, there's a red trash can icon. Maybe your guests change their mind. They don't really want this menu item. You can just use the red trash can to delete. So let's throw in some numbers to generate some cost for this event. We definitely need 10 of the street corn, chilaquiles, mussels, scallops. Oh, sounds so delicious. Ooh, jalapeno, 10 of those. Albondingas, 5, 7. Ooh, tacos. Oh my gosh, I'm getting so into this menu. All right. Cool. You'll notice here, for each pick list section in your docs, it'll give you a preview of the total cost of all those items in the lower right. And then we can repeat for any other section where we might need to add charges. So even if your venue doesn't sell food, maybe you sell AV items or room rental, you would have a pick list section of that name, and you could add from pick list and then add some charges. So let's add maybe bar packages. Maybe 30 people are signing up for that. You'll notice in other here that 2 items have automatically appeared. So if your venue always sells 2 items with every event, you can set up your docs and settings so that perhaps a additional bartender or complimentary valet always show up when you create an event. Rental equipment, maybe there's no rental equipment. Let's see. Studio light, perhaps this is an Elvis themed anniversary. It's going to be pretty unique. Maybe no additional staffing. Now here in your kitchen notes, this is a great place to communicate dietary restrictions. So maybe there are 4 vegans in attendance, 2 tree and nut allergies. Setup, disco ball hung from dining room ceiling. And then maybe that's it. Billing notes. So billing notes would be a great place if you require a deposit and you want people to pay via check. This would be a great place to say to your guests, hey, please send your check to, and then put your address. Now we'll notice our billing widget. So this is what counts up the total for the event. Here will be your categories. So the total of all your AV items, 180, all your beverage, food, and staffing. These totals are before any taxes and fees. Then your admin fee is going to calculate based on the particular items that have admin fee checked off. And the same is true of sales tax, so those will populate by default. Below we see our grand total. And if your venue requires a deposit, maybe Millie's always has 50% deposit. You can use this due date to pick a date when you need that submitted by, so maybe by Thursday. And if you wanted to lower this amount, maybe you only needed $500, or you could change the percent value as needed. I'm going to leave it at 50%. And then if you wanted, usually if your venue has a food and beverage minimum, it will always appear here. But if it doesn't, you can use add a field and select food and beverage minimum. And if you remember, we put in 2,000 for the food and beverage minimum previously, and that's what will populate right here. And you'll notice it's saying 0 because we've already met $2,000 between our food and beverage item costs. So that's set. The last place on this page that I'm going to point out is your terms and conditions. So a lot of people have their terms, so they always show up in the document by default, but perhaps your venue has different sets of terms depending on what type of event is happening. If that's the case, what you can do is use this templates dropdown here, and you'll see different folders with preset language. So if I go into Millie's terms and conditions, you'll see all these different options with different variations of our terms that we need people to sign. Because this is just a private dining event, I'm going to select private dining. I'm going to hit save. Awesome. So now when we look at our docs tab, we see the following. So if we clicked contract and event order, that is our document template. That's the page we were just on where we can add pick list items or make notes. And then below that, you'll see your layouts. So your BEO, contract, invoice, etc. Your layouts will pull information from your template based on how they're set up in settings. So now that we've created some docs, let's share those with our guests. So we need Ashley to sign on the contract and pay the deposit. I'm going to use this share button. And this might look familiar. This is that window we can use to send an email. So yes, we want Ashley to get our message. I want to use an email template, really save time. Contract and payment. This puts just generic language in. And here below where it says include the following documents, this is where you'll see that contract has been selected. How cool is that? So now we've shared this, and you'll notice the button to the right of contract now says unshare. If you remember, I really went on about how important statuses are. So now that this contract has been sent out, I want to change the status to tentative because I don't want my teammates accidentally booking this main dining room when Ashley thinks that, you know, her event is in the works. So I'm going to click edit here. And I'm simply going to status and changing it from prospect to tentative, and I'm clicking update. Cool. Now let's take a look at that contract as if we were Ashley. So if you click contract, the layout here, it will bring you to how this page appears to your guest from their portal. So you'll notice we have some of our text box sections, our special instructions, and our food items, beverages, etc. Here we have our billing. So you'll notice Ashley can even see that she needs to pay this by 8/12. And then below that, this is where she'll see those terms and conditions we added to the doc. So after she's read this off, yeah, that looks good. She can sign electronically by typing her name. And when she clicks I accept, it's gonna date and timestamp that action, and it'll create a PDF on your end of this set of documents as they look right now to stay on the event going forward. So even if you make changes, you'll have a copy of this contract exactly as it looks when she signed it. And the last thing she'll see on her contract is an authorization form. So if your venue integrates with an online payment processor, your guests can use this form, this button, to input their card information online. So you can have that on file. Maybe you need to run a transaction with a credit card, or maybe you just like to have it on file until the actual event date. This would be how she can do that. If your venue does not integrate with a payment processor, they won't have this button, so they won't be able to do it online, but they can print it out, write in their info, and send it back to you via email as well. So that would be the alternate workflow. The last thing I want to point out here, she'll also see this pay online button in case maybe she wants to pay the whole thing up front. She can use this button to do so, or add a card or bank account for future payments. When we go back to Tripleseat, as it will look from your end, you'll notice that to the right of contract, it says one of two signed and this one version. So this is what I mentioned. If you ever needed to reference that signed contract, you could pull up the PDF here. Cool. So maybe in addition to signing the contract, she sent you some money. So let's go to our payments tab. And we want to mark this deposit as paid. So to do that, we'll click on the gear icon and use the pay button here. That will ask us to define how Ashley paid us. So maybe she paid via check. It'll ask you to define the payment date. So maybe it was Tuesday. And this field called payment reference, this would be a great place to put your check number if your accounting team wants to report on that at some point. Click submit. You'll notice when we mark the payment as paid, the status changes, and importantly, you'll see the total outstanding has dropped to the grand total minus what's been paid to date. So this is just a helpful place to check what your guest has yet to pay you. Again, we've reached a major milestone in planning. So we have a signed contract and we have a paid deposit. So I'm going to update the status. I'm going to use this edit button in the upper right because I want all my teammates to know this is now a definite event. This has a high probability of taking place. And I want everyone to know, so at a glance, they can be in the loop about this party. Cool. Let's fast forward and pretend that maybe it's September or maybe it's the 29th of August. And this anniversary party has happened. Before we can close out the event, there are two things you will want to do. So the first is you'll want to make sure that the grand total, all your financials for this event match your receipt from the night of. So let's say this anniversary party, they ended up spending $150 more. We'll click back into the contract and event order. And we're just going to add those charges so we can report on this in the future. So what you could do is maybe you want to add the individual drinks that they drank, I mean. Or if you clicked add freehand, rather than selecting from a menu, you can create a line on the fly. So maybe it was 10 rum and cokes. What did I say, 150? So maybe they're 15 a piece. And whenever you create a freehand pick list item, you'll want to make sure that the category is defined, that you define the category, because that'll make sure that the appropriate taxes and fees get counted. Then you'll click +add right here to push that freehand item into your beverage section, and that will add the cost. I'm going to scroll back down and I'm going to click update here. So that's great. Now our total has increased and it matches our point of sales receipt. In addition, we'll want to make sure all payment transactions have been recorded. So we're going to go back into our payments tab here. And maybe they paid this total outstanding amount in one transaction. We can just use this button that says add payment for 2,000 and change. And it will open this pop-up window. So maybe we want to give it a title, just calling it final payment. And we'll hit save and pay. Perhaps Ashley paid via credit card. So we'll want to define the payment method, and you'll notice there are two credit card options. This first one, credit card, refers to if Ashley had authorized a card online, it would initiate the transaction when you click pay. But she paid this through your point of sale, so I recommend doing credit card in store. Then again, it will ask for a payment date and payment reference if applicable. Awesome. Now you'll notice the total outstanding has dropped to 0. This is important. So if it wasn't 0, it would mean either you owe your guest money, maybe a refund, perhaps they paid too much, or else your guest still owes you money for the cost of this great Elvis themed anniversary. Lastly, I always recommend checking out your tasks just to make sure everything has been marked as complete. And it has, so I'm going to click edit one last time because I want them to move the status to closed. I'm going to change it from definite to closed, and I'm going to hit update. Awesome. At this point in time, there is no additional action required from you or from your team. If you wanted, you can still send a discussion message thanking Ashley, even if the status is closed, but really no additional action is required, and this is set to be reported on. All right, guys, we've just walked through the whole event lifecycle. I'm still not seeing any questions, but I'm going to give it a minute or two in case something's on your mind and you want to submit it. I also want to point out this button you'll see in the upper right that's called Help and Question. This will open a window with additional resources to help you optimize your time in Tripleseat. So it's going to ask you, maybe you want to learn about your subscription and Tripleseat billing. You could click here to learn more about that. Online learning, if you select online learning, it will show you Tripleseat University. So this is a separate site and it contains short, concise videos about specific dimensions of the software. And then online webinars, maybe you're like, oh, I'm so ready to learn more. This would be the place to sign up. And then lastly, have a question. Perhaps you can't find the information you're looking for. This has our FAQ, a link to some help videos. And if you're still having trouble, you can use this blue contact support to reach us. And then maybe you connected with us, you'll find a link to all past conversations right here in case you need to reference that. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for attending. We're so excited to have you at Tripleseat. If you have more questions, be sure to reach back out. But for now, enjoy the rest of your Thursday. All right, bye, everybody. Thanks, everybody.